Greetings and welcome back, everyone. This is Into the Nexus, the podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, here as always with Kyle Ferguson. Hey, man. This was supposed to be like the episode where I come back from a long break, and I'm all excited to see you and talk nonsense.
Naturally, we'd be talking about Zagara and her reign supreme, but that is not today.
It is not this day. Trying really hard not to get sidetracked about how excited I am about Zagara. But anyways, today's episode is going to be just a tad different because it is going to be our support of the Blizzard Walkout. We will be covering the lawsuit and the accounts of harassment against Blizzard that I'm sure many of you listening have already heard about. But we're going to be covering this the same way that we would any other news that we have covered in the past regarding Blizzard and Heroes of the Storm. And this impacts both. Matter of fact, quite a few. We're going to hear from a lot of Heroes of the Storm alum today, as many of them have made statements. Now, we do want to let you know that we are not ending Into the Nexus, and we do plan to be back next week with our normal Heroes Roundup. But this week is our support of the Blizzard Walkout that took place yesterday, July 28th, depending on when you're listening to this in the future. So after the news, you and I are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with a fun chat as always, but about non-Blizzard games. Think of it as a Weeksauce revival to work in tandem with our support of the walkout here. Now, today, again, we're going to be very focused on the stories, on the news of everything that has unfolded this week. If you want to hear, personally for me, like my more kind of emotional, personal reaction to all of this, alongside that of Jocelyn and RidiculousHat, I would personally recommend you go and check out this week's Angry Chicken, as it too covers this. But it's much more just, oh my God, we're overwhelmed. Let's just sit down and have a chat and figure out how we all feel about this. That's what the Angry Chicken was this week. So again, go check that out. And again, I can't recommend Jocelyn's remarks enough. Sadly, she has a lot of experience with this. So also, we recommend visiting our show notes for all of the links to the stories that we're going to be covering today, because my goodness, there are a lot. Shout out to you, Kyle. You put in a absurd amount of work gathering up everything that pertains to the lawsuit and the walkout.
This episode is going to be hard news, as it were. There are a lot of people who said, you're just discovering this now, thanks to the state of California. And that's very, very true. We have looked back in time through recruitment websites, through exit surveys on various websites like Indeed, as well as others, and just personal accounts that have been pouring out this week of the conditions at Blizzard Entertainment, particularly for women. We are going to cover all of that as best we can in this show today, as well, of course, catch you up on what's happened over the last 9 days, because since this released, it has been nonstop.
Yes. Yeah. It hit a new height for me yesterday. Someone who was just like, it's walkout day. I thought we were going to start mending. And it certainly seems like for the employees that attended, that is the case. But at least for me, I use the term fan cautiously now, sitting at home, yesterday was harder. And we'll get to that. So without further ado, let's get into all of this. Let's talk about the Activision Blizzard walkout and the lawsuit against Blizzard. We decided that we really want to begin this rundown, by the way, with a quote from prior Heroes animator Lana Baczynski. And Lana's has had a lot to say in the wake of everything that's been going on around Blizzard. And I think it's all incredible. But Kyle, you and I were both struck by this quote, and we just want to start with this, which is that Lana wrote, quote, "The industry will continue to generate trauma like this until we choose to remove individuals that harass instead of justifying harassment based on their perceived usefulness."
What we are seeing from all video game companies, those that have been accused and charged in the past, and those that have not been charged, is that this is everywhere. And by moving to another game right now, you're probably not escaping this problem, in all honesty. And so by talking about Blizzard today, we are talking about gaming as a whole and how we, the audience, consumers, if you will, can help make this a better place by being aware of these issues. So let's dive straight into what happened with the state of California. The state of California filed lawsuit against Blizzard. This was the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. Allegations aimed specifically at Blizzard, not Activision. This was a 2-year investigation conducted by the state of California. The allegations included are sex discrimination pay, sex discrimination assignment, promotion, termination, constructive discharge, sexual harassment, and retaliation and failure to prevent discrimination, harassment, and retaliation.
And the lawsuit itself has much more specifics about allegations, and I'm going to get into them here. Some of them are extremely difficult to hear. I also have a strong feeling many of you have probably already read these, but since we're talking about it, I don't want to skip them. So I'm going to get into them now. Some of the major allegations include women of color were, quote, particularly vulnerable targets of Activision Blizzard's discriminatory practices. Female employees likened Activision Blizzard to, quote, working in a frat house, with what was described as cube crawls and rape jokes being common. The behavior was known to and even encouraged by supervisors. Senior creative director of World of Warcraft, Alex Afrasiabi, permitted blatant harassment under his watch to the extent that his office was referred to as the Cosby Suite, a reference to Bill Cosby. And they also went further in saying, direct quote from the lawsuit documents, Jalen Brack, president of Blizzard, allegedly had multiple conversations with Afrasiabi about his drinking and that he had been too friendly towards female employees at company events, but gave Afrasiabi a slap on the wrist, i.e. verbal counseling, in response to these incidents. Another allegation that came up, and this is the one that I found particularly difficult to read, which is a female employee committed suicide on a company trip, quote, due to a sexual relationship she was having with her male supervisor and was, quote, suffering other sexual harassment at work prior to her death, including male coworkers passing around nude photos of her at a Blizzard holiday party. One of the last allegations here is that a former CTO was observed, quote, groping inebriated female employees and was known for making hiring decisions on the basis of how applicants looked. It's a lot to take in.
And this has continued, and there have been many statements from the company itself, as well as former Blizzard employees and higher-ups about this. To give you a rundown of the timeline since this broke, thanks to Jason Schreier, who has been sort of watching this investigation over the last 2 years. On July 20th, the DFEH files this gender discrimination complaint against Activision Blizzard, now brought to our attention. July 21st, Activision Blizzard leadership releases a statement denying the allegations. July 23rd, past and present employees speak out and confirm stories of abuse. On July 24th is the big sort of World of Warcraft day. World of Warcraft developers say work has stopped following the lawsuit. Mike Morheim releases his statement. Chris Metzen releases his statement. And this quote from Chris Metzen sort of sums up what both statements said in so many words. We have failed many people when they needed us because we had the privilege of not noticing and not engaging. On the 26th, employees sign an open letter condemning the leadership statement. On July 26th, also, Activision Blizzard hosts a partial staff meeting. On July 27th, employees organize a walkout to support the petition against Activision Blizzard. Activision Blizzard did pay them during this time. They did not have to clock out for their walkout as a gesture of good faith. July 27th, Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick sends letters to employees.
And then yesterday, which was the day of the walkout itself, July 28th, employees walked out and denounced Activision Blizzard's sexist culture, and Kotaku put up an article revealing information regarding the Cosby Suite mentioned in the complaint and expanding upon it that it was also apparently a hotel room at BlizzCon for multiple years. It doesn't specify which.
Particularly the pictures they included are from 2013. So this investigation began in 2018 or so, and now is allowing the public to see the full report. But this goes way, way back. We cannot say in any conscience that this is of the last 2 years, this has any relationship to the previous CEO or creative directors leaving and others replacing them. This has been going for a very, very long time in Blizzard. And the earliest account I found of sexual harassment in the workplace dated all the way back to 2006 with the quote, "Imagine you're being told you're a trophy hire all the time, only to be laid off when Blizzard thinks it's time to cut the budget. The imposter syndrome is overwhelming." Of course, check the show notes. There are many, many other stories over this 5-year, 10-month account in here. 2006 would put us at the release or near the release of Burning Crusade.
Yeah, to just drive home how long these issues have been at least documented in a way that we can find them.
This is also before the Activision Blizzard merger, which happened on July 9th, 2008. So that excuse is out the window as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kyle, don't get me started on all of the excuses that I've seen.
This is why we're doing the show today in the depth we are.
Yeah. And part of the reason this is a big wrap up is after Angry Chicken, I don't think I can sit here and have another like personal, emotional conversation in the same damn week. So let's get back into it here. So we just talked about the last 9 days, essentially, from July 20th up till the walkout yesterday, where so many things have come to light. Kyle, you essentially laid out all of these allegations into chronological order. A lot has come out in 9 days, and you've kind of organized it from 2010 up till current.
It's very easy for us to romanticize a certain time period in Blizzard, particularly as strategy fans and esports fans. It's very easy to say that this may have started after Wings of Liberty 2010, or perhaps it was some sort of result of pressure after the lack of success of something like Project Titan and Overwatch's release. But that simply is not the case. In fact, when we look at StarCraft Wings of Liberty coming out in 2010, we see it aligns with the 2010 BlizzCon panel that you may have seen a video rotating around this week, where a fan walks up and she asks if we can get women who look like they didn't step out of a Victoria's Secret's catalog, to which the panel of employees with fans, paying fans in the audience replies, "Which catalog would you like them to step out of?" Alex,
so,
Afraziabi.
Editor's note, Kyle and I have had a lot of chats this week, and Afraziabi's last name gives you a hard time with pronunciation.
I haven't had to say it before. I got it now. Afraziabi. Alex Afraziabi said, "Yeah, we'll pick different catalogs." In that same panel, another question is posed by another female audience member, and J. Allen Brack replies, "What catalog is the Tauren female coming out of? Sexy, sexy cow business," and then gives rock hands above his face to the cheer of the crowd.
Yeah, this is a question asked at their own convention by their fans, and this was their reply. And this just has sparked a lot of conversation of, hey, if this is how they act, in public to us, what the hell is it like behind the scenes? And this is also the kind of thing where I look at it's a leaked Brack letter, by the way, the Jalen Brack letter that's been going around this week in response to the lawsuit was not a public statement. That was an internal email that got leaked. And then he said, quote, "I disdain bro culture and have spent my career fighting it." And it's hard to stomach. It's hard for me to take that with any grain of truth.
With a career fighting it and then seeing this 2010 panel.
Yeah.
But we do move on in time and we find the 2013 BlizzCon Cosby suite.
Yes. And this is where this was essentially the Kotaku article that broke yesterday. And I was I typed in all caps a lot yesterday. You heard a lot from me, Kyle. But this is where we got the pictures of Alex Afraziabi amongst multiple other Blizzard employees, including Corey Stockton, Greg Street, aka Ghostcrawler, Jesse McCree, and Dave Kosak, someone I've had on the Angry Chicken before.
Well, not only that, but HR representatives. And when a lot of people are saying this week that their stories weren't listened to or they were afraid to go to HR, this is where we find some of those individuals.
That's been a big sticking point for me, is kind of a pervasive theme of HR failing. But in this article, it said, quote, an employee brought these 2013 events to our attention. This is Kotaku in June 2020. A spokesperson for Activision Blizzard told Kotaku when asked about the quote unquote Cosby Suite, images and allegations against Afraziabi, quote, we immediately conducted our own investigation and took corrective action. At the time of the report, we had already conducted a separate investigation of Afraziabi and terminated him for his misconduct in his treatment of other employees, which terminated's an interesting choice of words.
Particularly interesting because it was done under the table in 2020. In June 2020, Alex Afraziabi, help me out, Garrett. Afraziabi quietly leaves Blizzard. He removes his social media pages entirely, deletes LinkedIn, and also his credit as creative director of Shadowlands disappears. So the terminated him for misconduct and treatment of other employees was silent.
Yes. Personal thought, it sure seems swept under the rug.
In 2016, Ben Kilgore, this is the CTO that was brought up in the investigation, not by name, is promoted the next year from Chief Technology Officer to Chief Development Officer. He was being investigated for inappropriate conduct towards female employees, but still received that promotion.
Yeah. In 2016, there was apparently a meeting between Jalen Brack and a group of women from the World of Warcraft team. Apparently, because of concerns of Alex Afraziabi calling employees, quote, bitches, and having a do you know who I am episode. And apparently Jalen Brack, okay, sorry, I want to... This came from Megan Scavio on Twitter, who wrote, quote, Jab pulled all of the women into the room the day after this happened and asked us about our concerns. At the time, I thought it was an inappropriate response. He reassured us that actions had been taken, and by all of the women, I mean every single female identifying person on the WoW team. It was a full room, dozens of us. Dozens, and if I'm smiling, it's because I like Arrested Development, not because I like anything else I read here. Yeah.
2016, this puts us in the year of Overwatch, also the year Chris Metzen leaves.
Yeah, that's... it's... I'm just gonna. I'm trying to stay away from personal notes, but I find it very difficult. So, again, I'm just like, I really appreciate the chronological order you've laid everything out in, Kyle, because it's just, I don't know, it makes this more real, and I can picture it all unfolding better. So, and then we already talked about Afraziabi quietly leaving, but that's kind of the next big development in this kind of timeline, which, as you said, Kyle, happened in 2020. And all of the redactions of Afraziabi mentions at the time.
And Afraziabi's disappearance, according to when we tie that up to the official statements that they've already taken action and that we've already taken care of this internally, we don't, in so many words, need the state to get involved here, was entirely quiet. And this was supposed to fix the situation for all these employees.
Right, which, yeah, it's just,
So these are the main allegations.
Yeah.
These are the big stories that are causing the state of California to get involved. As it is a lawsuit, Blizzard goes to court for this, and they, at the highest level, are of course going to deny this right now because you get a court date. And you can then countersue and get all sorts of legal business going in order to recover from defamation, lies that may have been imposed upon your reputation.
Well, that's been an interesting part to kind of talk off the cuff here, which is that their initial response, the very first official response we got was full on denial by Blizzard lawyers. But then we got the Kotick letter, which sounds like an appropriation of an apology.
It's definitely an advancement here. Blizzard is desperate to handle this internally. They want this to be done by their own teams, by their own people. And from the official statements, it seems that they see the interference of California as just that. And in fact, to them, much of this is already gone. And even to the note of, how dare you bring up the past? Which, if we take these allegations and we connect them to these historical markers that we see that have happened to individuals and people who are speaking up on Twitter, those are horrible situations. But we're also an entire team, an entire company here. So that is why I went around to review sites like Indeed and others, in hersite.com, and collected female and employee statements about their time at Blizzard.
Yeah, you went and looked at a ton of publicly viewable employee reviews on these sites. This is what we're not journalists, we're podcasters. But this is, even with just access to these types of publicly viewable platforms, like, themes emerged of questionable practices and worse from all genders, as a matter of fact, too. When you started showing me some of the stuff you're pulling off here, it's across the board. And so this is where I would highly recommend, if you're out there listening and you want to see these reviews that Kyle pulled, they're in the show notes. I'm not going to sit here and read them all in full because there's a ton of them, but we are going to get into some of the trends that emerged when looking at reviews of Blizzard going back into the early 2010s. They state things like poor treatment of women. Poor treatment of women is mentioned many times across the short sampling of reviews that you found. And it's not just on sites like you mentioned in her site, which is a female-focused employer review site. It's across the board. There was one particularly damning quote I read in one of these reviews that says, "This is an absolute horrible place to work. Unless you are willing to go out drinking with the managers after hours, or publicly berate others, or simply keep quiet when you see people doing unsavory things, you will not fit in here." And that was one of the older ones.
These go back and across many, many different teams. We have service representatives, quality assurance, game masters, senior 3D artists, and of course, customer service people. Now, a lot of the customer service is from the place in Austin. Their story is particularly disheartening because they're shown a video of Blizzard campus in Irvine and how beautiful of a place it is to work, and then are subjected to their own managerial issues and their own supervisor issues. They go on to speak of just pay. Extremely low pay for the cost of living in Irvine is a constant mention throughout this. Quote, "The workers spent 75% playing the action, or they spent 75% of time playing instead of working because the company pays you 75% of the job market." Now, that, of course, we're seeing quotes of something like even 18% below for women, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Employees being seen and treated as equipment, being a bad work environment if you're interested in being a present partner or parent. All these sort of themes are throughout. Being fired for taking sick days to take care of children. The consistent statement of being treated well or having a chance to advance being a matter of luck. And your popularity and, quote, butt kissing gets you the promotions.
The luck one was something I really latched onto from talking to personal friends that work at Blizzard from reading Lana's statements and also seeing these reviews was that so much in the past week I've seen current and prior female employees at Blizzard saying that, yeah, my experience wasn't that bad, but it seemed more like it was luck. And that one just hit home for me because it just seems like that's not the kind of thing that should be left up to luck. You shouldn't be like, oh boy, I hope I get a team that doesn't abuse me.
Constantly we hear about, even from larger accounts, the sort of revolving door of management, particularly in the supervisor role. There are a lot particularly in like quality assurance and customer serving roles, like GMs, a chance for advancement if you play the games, if you stick around, if you attend all the parties, to go into base level management of your team, where you're also working alongside them. But the supervisor roles are often insanely distant and even called yes men throughout this, and pressuring those teams. Customer service is not a happy place. You may be familiar with this. The fact that they are not making this a place that is safe for people, a place that is even, dare we say, fun for them to deal with customers, is absurd. That is a very stressful job.
Yeah, people who have to deal with other people should probably have a vaguely positive work environment. But moving along, would you like to talk about the Heroes of the Storm representation we've had in talks around the walkout?
Of course, because that's our game here.
Yeah, so as we mentioned at the top of the show, kicking off of that quote, Lana Baczynski, prior Heroes of the Storm animator, has had quite the tweet chain. Got a link to the full statement in our show notes. If you listen to the show, there's probably a very good chance you already follow Lana. If you don't, you should. Lana's just a wonderful follow. But Lana really gets into her personal experience and mentioned that her experience on Team One was, as she would put it, overwhelmingly positive. But also, she wanted to set old tweets of her straight, as she said that they were being misinterpreted. So Lana came out in strong support of the walkout and the individuals sharing their stories. She also clarified that while she did not leave due to harassment, that she did still encounter sexual harassment, writing, quote, "I experienced harassment that was handled well. Many of the most egregious cases occurred during my first year or so there." She continues saying, "I experienced harassment, including my own Afraziabi run-in, that was not handled well." She also said, "And I experienced more still that didn't even register as needing to be handled, because compared to what I had already been through in the wider world of existing as a woman, those incidents felt unremarkable."
Lana went on to say, so many of these problems exist because of the lack of diversity in these spaces. Lana counts herself as, quote, lucky that the Heroes team welcomed diversity. She also goes on to say, and end on one of the more hopeful pieces. My great hope throughout all of this garbage is that the accounts that have been highlighted both in the lawsuit and across social media this week serve to bolster our resolve as an industry to actively seek out, support, and fight for diverse candidates in game development.
And then our friend Adam Jackson, also shared thoughts, two sizable threads or twit-longers, tweeting that he was, quote, not happy with our corporate response to the recent sexual assault allegations, and that said response, quote, does not represent the views of me or the vast majority of those who work at the company, and then added, or really anyone I've interacted with since. Adam called leaders who sweep problems under the rug weak, and continued on saying, quote, the obvious patterns of behavior that one can see when reading the allegations, to simply dismiss them so quickly does not even make logical sense, not to mention how dismissive such a response is towards others who have experienced or are experiencing similar events. AZ Jackson went on and called on all gaming communities to do better and said that he cannot think of any community he's been a part of that hasn't had members that, quote, treat others differently based on what they look like instead of their merit and actions. And then near the end of this first thread, I'm still talking about the first thread with AZ Jackson at the moment, Adam said, quote, "Until we as a society fix how we view each other, this will keep happening." And if that doesn't tie in to the Lana quote at the beginning, I don't know what does.
He also put out another statement during the walkout, detailing his history of making friends with Brood War and his journey to become a Blizzard developer. He continued on expanding that as he grew older, his time to foster online friendships shrank. BlizzCon became the place where he'd talk about and experience Heroes of the Storm alongside players in person. He ended with, "I'm overall proud of my time at Blizzard and of the good things the company has brought to the world. What a strange time it is now that the true cost of the good has come to light. It is hard to reconcile that. Just how many people suffered for the good memories I have and continue to suffer for wanting to bring the same good experience that I do have to others. It's a difficult time for all of us, but I choose to believe that we can have more of the good and less of the bad that the games bring. I choose to believe that we can accept and embrace people to share their common love that we have for these great gaming experiences that Blizzard and others have brought to the world. I'm walking today because I choose to believe we can do better."
His comment about sharing common love hit me right in the nerd because it's what I like to think we do with our silly podcast.
It does. What we hope to do throughout the show is constantly to bring hope, even escapism. But you have to ask yourself, what is the cost of this escapism? And is anything that we have covered here so far, even? There's tons we're not going to be able to get to on this show. Tons of quotes. Does that make a good game? Does this environment foster a creative environment where you could sit at your desk and space out and truly not be concerned about the person next to you, the people who might be parading towards you on a Friday afternoon?
It's, yeah, there's so many angles, right? It's like you should want to be excited that you work somewhere that like parties, but it seems like that is a dreadful thing for a ton of employees at Blizzard.
Like, at the very least, it would be massively uncomfortable. Again, how do you space out and come up with a quest, a character, a design when you have this sort of environment around you?
Yeah. And yeah, I got into this a little bit on Angry Chicken. I think it bears repeating that a lot of the conversation this week has kind of brought this, kind of pulled the camera back, pulled the lens back and been like, this is an industry-wide problem. And I've even had some folks write in and be like, hey, this is a problem with every studio. Why are we focusing on Blizzard? Well, it's because this is Blizzard right now. Blizzard is being accused of these things. They're having a lawsuit brought against them for these things. And yeah, needless to say, like, it hits home for me. And I feel the need to talk about this and make it clear that this is happening. So that's why we're talking about this today.
Well, there's also the sentiment that you bleed blue. That once you've been a part of Blizzard, it will always be a part of you. That Blizzard was worth the lower pay because of what it brought to your resume.
Well, and that certainly seems to persist through so many of the stories that have broken in the last week. I mean, hell, those reviews you looked up that are publicly accessible. It's like you're meant to just grin and bear it.
But that's why we're focused. If this were to come out about any gaming studio, we need to be talking about it. But this is why it's so important, because it's Blizzard, because that culture at their work is perceived as the highest caliber. It's what companies want to be when they become a gaming studio. And that's why we want to see change there.
Yeah. Yep. And again, we're not the only Heroes of the Storm outlet talking about this. That's why we pulled quotes from Lana, and Adam Jackson. Also, Wisdom Media, who run the CCL, put out a statement. I believe it was just yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. Anyway, they said that we are outraged to see the extensive reports of mistreatment targeting individuals who we work so closely with. Safety and inclusion should not be reserved for those with power, but all too often that's exactly what we've seen occur. Today and always, our hearts and support go out to the employees at Activision Blizzard seeking change from within. We implore Activision Blizzard to make transparent, meaningful action for change to create a safer, more inclusive space in the esports and gaming industries. And so that's the thing. You and I talk about this a lot, that being a part of the Heroes of the Storm community, and being really tapped into it, we feel pretty on the outside of the bigger Blizzard machine, because this is me talking personally. We feel like Blizzard tried to kill our game.
And we took it back.
Yes.
It feels owned by the community. Of all the games at Blizzard, this is the one that we have influence on. We changed the name of Rainer's passive. We changed the name of Lone Talents, right? Like minor stuff, but the influence that the Blizzard community has over its game is unparalleled. And the fact that the CCL just finished a phenomenal season and announced with Gillyweed and Jules on the stream a season 3 is fantastic. And that tournament continues to fuel competition and pushing this game to be more than can. And ultimately, competition fuels the balance. And this cycle from our community that we have with our developers feels so personal. And there is a little bit of insanity in the face of being called BlizzCon the game after this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that, like I said at the top of the show, it feels weird to say as a fan, because at the moment I do not feel like a fan, but as someone as tied as closely to all of this as I am, like, there's so much of this that's just been very difficult to stomach.
Taking a look at the other departments, World of Warcraft has put out an official statement, and they said they will, quote, remove references that are not appropriate to our world. At the moment, this is mostly Afrasiabi's characters, as well as those that might feature his name from EverQuest, where he came from beforehand. A lot of these characters directly have been replaced with one Isa Grim, I think is how you would say this NPC's name. But as well as they're going through and changing the name of all the items that might have influence or named to him. This includes a lord at the Wormrest Temple, and of course the character in Stormwind.
Yeah, which, again, I tweeted as much that I said, like, this is hardly a magical cure-all, but I also added in that I was also selfishly enjoying watching this stuff get stripped out of the game.
Well, and Jeff Hamilton, senior system designer on WoW, said on Twitter, I can tell you almost no work is being done on World of Warcraft right now while this obscenity plays out. And that benefits nobody. Not the players, not the developers, not the shareholders.
Yeah, it gets into kind of what you were talking about earlier. Like, it's not good for anyone.
The other games have not made statements, including Here's the Storm has not put out an official statement on this. The focus seems to be on World of Warcraft, where, of course, many of these stories came from. However, we are hearing stories from employees in the various departments, such as Overwatch. We heard from Kyle. A company is never family. And, of course, players over there are demanding the removal of McCree, who we have now seen in these photos in the Cosby suite. His name's given to that character.
I didn't know McCree was named name for name after a Blizzard employee.
And that is what we're inferring right now as well, and the community is inferring. I do not have exact stats on that.
Well, I mean, it's the exact same name.
It does seem to be the case, yes, first name and all. For the Hearthstone team, we're seeing Korra speak up. I spent years being disrespected and lied to before that. I craved approval so much.
I can 100% confirm that as someone who's covered Hearthstone since beta. Cora used to be a caster for Hearthstone before she was a Hearthstone developer, and the Hearthstone community was extremely toxic towards her.
And allow me to finish that with the slight edit of the cursing for myself. So effing badly for so long.
Thanks, Kyle.
The
If cussing was ever gonna, if hard cussing was ever gonna be on this show, this would be the episode.
I agree, but I will still take a pass today. Diablo's story hit me particularly hard. This came from Brandy Camel's blog, who put it up yesterday. She is the one that appeared in the video as the associate community manager for Diablo, where they announced something exciting for Diablo fans coming up to Immortal. She wrote the script for that. However, it was completely rewritten again and again by her managers and eventually didn't reflect what she wanted to do, which was warn the community they were about to see something, Diablo Immortal, but to look forward to that something else. The higher-ups were too afraid to give away the spoiler that Diablo 4 was in existence, even though recruiting websites said they were hiring for a Diablo project.
I have not heard the story until right now.
She also appeared in the opening BlizzCon video saying, "You will bleed Blizzard blue for the rest of your life." If you wish to read her story in full, I do suggest it. She talks about managers being total useless yes men, the frequent restructures and constant revolving doors of managers. Community managers were faced with getting discredited, being called too emotional about a game as community managers. And this was amplified if you were a woman. She also pushed for protections while at Blizzard events like PAX and BlizzCon. She insisted that tickets were given with a +1 for women, of which they were against, until such time she was drugged at a Twitch party at PAX 2018. After that, she was allowed to get that +1 for the women at Blizzard. There was no HR support for the community managers dealing with the fallout for Diablo Immortal on the show floor. Quote, "I was crowded and ganged up on by angry and upset fans. Security was not there to help me. I was on my own. Developers were able to exit safely via backstage. I was vulnerable on the show floor amidst a crowd of attendees."
And there's even more stories. Again, we're not going to get to all of them, but we do have them linked in the show notes. If you never accessed the show notes before, worth reminding you that it's a Google Docs link. It's how we make the show. Kyle and I write them together. They're always linked at the bottom of each and every episode post. You can see exactly what we use to make the show, and we always include links to any story that we're referencing. So let's end on exactly what the employees at Blizzard are asking for. They drew up papers with their demands. That was a big part of the walkout yesterday. And in case you haven't already heard them, I did want to cover what the demands are. There are 4 of them, starting with an end to forced arbitration clauses in all employee contracts, a change Google employees successfully fought for in 2019.
Forced arbitration says that a customer or employee cannot take their case to court, but instead has to go through private arbitration forums designed by the very corporation that they are disputing against.
Yeah. Their second demand is that new hiring and promotion processes to increase representation across the company. Employees say that, quote, current practices have led women, in particular women of color and transgender women, non-binary people, and other marginalized groups that are vulnerable to gender discrimination, not being hired fairly for new roles when compared to men. Their third demand is the publication of salary and promotion data for employees of all genders and ethnicities at the company. The raw numbers that were posted in the lawsuit documents were really telling to me, because it's just math. You're just looking at it like, wow, one of these numbers is notably lower than the rest.
On average, 18% lower if you're not a male.
Yeah. And then the fourth demand, allow a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force to hire a third-party organization to audit the executive staff. saying it is imperative to identify how current systems have failed to prevent employee harassment and to propose new solutions to address these issues. And those are the 4 demands.
Those are some good demands.
Yeah. We've been trying and failing to keep our personal thoughts out of today's episode. But this is, again, as we said at the top of the show, this episode is us standing in support of the walkout, and I definitely support these demands.
During this walkout, they also covered up the lead responsibly, every voice matters, and play nice, play fair plaques that were around the orc statue. As well as they put out a rather lengthy letter disputing the exacts of many of the higher-ups of Blizzard that were released earlier in the week. That walkout did happen. It was successful. Many are still afraid of reprisal from the company.
Yeah,
it was a very scary thing to do.
There was a photo of a lot of the walkout attendees in front of the Blizzard gate, and multiple Blizzard employees were specifying on Twitter that it was only a portion of the attendees because a lot of them did not want to be photographed.
This is naturally going to be an ongoing story.
Oh, yeah. I did my first podcast covering this on Monday, and I knew there was going to be developments come today. I wasn't expecting that Kotaku article. We talked quite a bit on the Angry Chicken about how you shouldn't be surprised because stories like this have come out before. And I wasn't surprised when the lawsuit broke, but that Kotaku article really just kind of hit me in the center of gravity. So it's been a week.
It made it very real at a community event. However, let's talk a little bit about this community. Because of all the Blizzard games to cover this, maybe even criticize this, Heroes of the Storm players are prepared. We have been through a bit of a ride, and this community loves their game. And as we said, owns Heroes of the Storm more than any other community at Blizzard. We want to continue to be a part of that community and make it better from the inside.
Yeah, because that's what I've been feeling this week, is thankful for the community, because I have talked to so many of you about my thoughts and trying to reconcile with everything that's been going on. And time again, I've also thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if everyone had that? Like, to me, I see that as an extension of the failures of Blizzard's inner workings, is not feeling safe enough to talk about things that are just difficult, hard, abusive. So, it's just, this is just my way of saying, Into the Nexus community, just everyone in this podcasting community, thank you. Because my brain's been on fire this week.
And some of that contribution will, of course, be continuing to cover this as it develops, as the ongoing accusations continue, as the lawsuit proceeds, as more and more stories come out. We will, of course, share with you the joy that is playing this game and all the independent tournaments and activities around it, the balance, our own devs. We are very excited to continue the show in that way. Yeah. But we're also going to be very vigilant and making sure that we are making this community the best it can be, and asking those who do not make it a good community anymore to step out.
Yep, absolutely. I like to think I've been good about doing that already. I know I have banned and removed people forcibly before for such behavior. But it is at the forefront of my mind now. So anyway, before we break and come back, Kyle, to hang out and be friends, because I'm going to need that. Just again, I want to thank you all for listening. I think it's been a hard week for everyone, but it's definitely been a hard week for the women in our community. But I also, again, want to recommend some other podcasts. with friends and fellow co-hosts from our community. So again, if you haven't already, definitely go listen. You'll hear me again, but also definitely go listen to this week's Angry Chicken, because Jocelyn really hammers home some, I think, really strong points. And that one was different. We weren't covering it like a news story. We just kind of sat down and talked. Also, I was really, the instance made me feel things. Scott Johnson sat down this week with Jules, who works at Wisdom Media and works on the CCL. And Jules got into some really meta conversation about the hesitation to invite women or marginalized groups onto your podcast for fear of tokenism. And her and Scott talk about that. And that hit me hard, because I know I've shared Scott's thoughts of like, I don't always want to reach out because I don't want to feel like I'm asking you to come relive hardships. And I kind of feel like I get a pass because I have a show with Joss. And I have this friend who I have a professional relationship with, who's always there to give me a different perspective. But at the same time, I've definitely hesitated before. And so if you're into that geeky mindset about what it's like creating content and much more difficult to reconcile social concerns around it, holy crap, I can't recommend that instance episode enough. And then also, Lady Monica and I talk on Twitter all the time, usually joking about dyeing our hair and whatnot, but Lady Monica is on cue for fun, and they did an episode this week talking all about this as well. So you should go check that out. So I'll leave you with that for now. Kyle, shall we take a break and come back, just shoot the shit?
Let's do that. Some non-Blizzard shoot shitting.